So I don't much care for the name Switch 2, and I wish that it was Super Switch. I remember hearing that that was a possibility of what the name was going to be from somebody on the inside, and lo and behold, I'm like, no, they wouldn't name it the Switch 2. That's the PlayStation thing, right? And then they did, and I'm 100% convinced it's because the internet just kind of named it that, and then like Nintendo's marketing department was like, well, I guess we have to call it that. That's my conspiracy theory for the day. We're going to talk about consoles. Lava Ring X on Patreon asked me to talk about my favorite consoles, and I've played quite a few of them, so I thought, you know what? I'll have a little story for my experience with every single one of them. And because I've got stories, even the ones that I didn't own. So opening up with this, I guess I have to check my privilege a little bit. I was very lucky that I didn't have to take place in the console war growing up throughout the 90s because my family had both an NES and a Sega Genesis. And I think that was a product of, I had two older sisters, and I think that maybe they wanted their own consoles each, but they probably also played a bit of both with each other and stuff at the time. But yeah, so we were all off. My family worked very, very hard, and we were lucky enough to have a fair bit of money, and so it wasn't an issue for us to have multiple consoles at the time. I realized that this was not a common thing for people, so just putting that out there, checking my privilege on this. We were well off at the time, and I was very fortunate that was the case. So therefore, I was both a Mario and a Sonic kid growing up because we could have both. I didn't have to choose. So I'm grateful for that too. I got to experience both. Although, despite the fact that there's no contest, Mario's the clear winner. That's a different Kirblog. I've probably done that Kirblog topic already. Nonetheless, so my earliest memories of still being in my single digits are playing a lot of the NES and a lot of the Sega Genesis. Like many people with the NES in particular, I sure did have to. I sure did have to blow on my or not have to. Probably at the behest of my technology. Blowing into cartridges and the dust ports or whatever they are, like on the console to try to get stuff to work because games would just not quite start up a lot of the time. But in fact, the very babysitter that was a friend with my sister growing up, where the Kirbifer name was born, which I've talked about in my very first Kirblog I ever did. She had an NES, and she played a lot of NES games with me. She would both come over to look after me when people were out, and sometimes I would come over to that babysitter's house because she was like a friend of the family at the time. And she had an NES there. And in fact, I remember very distinctly I beat Mario 3 for the first time on the NES with what was at that babysitter's house. It might have even been around the same time that it might have literally been around the same time that I came up with the name Kirbifer when I was 12 years old. That literally might have been around that exact time that happened, actually. So a little possible bit of history there, but the exact specifics are lost to time. But NES games were very hard for me. It's funny in the same breath of playing Mario 3. There are very few Nintendo original NES games that I beat. Which, by the way, a little thing about that, and this is a thing that I think is very much lost to only my generation. So by the time I was born, I must have been 2 or 3 when the Super Nintendo came out, and no, not even, yeah, no, I was born at the very tail end of '88, and the Super Nintendo came out in 1990, I believe, and so I would have been 2, but I didn't get a Super Nintendo that I owned myself until several years later. So, but I knew that it was a thing. I knew that there was the original Nintendo Entertainment System, and then there was the Super Nintendo. So a lot of people I knew, and I really think that this colloquial, kind of thing was, only, maybe to my generation. But I don't know if anybody is around, mid-30s like me at this time. Comment if this is, maybe it was just a regional thing, but we called it the regular Nintendo. Retroactively, it was the Super Nintendo, and before that, it was the regular Nintendo. That was kind of the term of differentiation that we had to distinguish the two different consoles from one another. And so for a number of years, and then I don't remember exactly when I learned the term NES and Super NES or NES and SNES. That probably was by the time that I was a teenager. But yeah, it was Super Nintendo and regular Nintendo for the longest time, where the way that I grew up. But I played a lot of NES games. I infamously traded my copy of NES Zelda to that same babysitter for a copy of Mega Man 2, because Mega Man 2 was one of the only games that I was good at and did eventually beat. I did not beat Zelda. I was very bad at it. No, it was not the gold cartridge. I did not trade away, something that was worth a lot of money to somebody. But she did offer, like, you never play Zelda, and I like Zelda, and you want my Mega Man 2 copy, like, you want to trade? And I was like, okay. So we did. So I think I still have that Mega Man 2 copy somewhere, actually. But yeah, NES was less common as opposed to, and actually even the Sega Genesis, which the Genesis was a strange beast because I just, other than like some of the typical, like Sonic 1 and 2 and 3 and Knuckles, a lot of my Sega Genesis games were not the other like kind of classical ones that, everybody knew of, that were like, these really legendarily great Sega Genesis games. I had a lot. Genesis was that system that I just had like random bullshit of. I had like George Foreman's KO boxing. I had like, what the fuck was it? Mystic Prince, just all these like random loose ones that we'd pick up at like yard sales or like, dollar stores or whatever. They just have like random used games and shit, like flea markets and stuff. We just find these like really shitty, like, random ass games that we would find. And I'd play them once and be like, all right, well, that was terrible. But we'd get them for like, like $1 or whatever, because nobody wanted them. But I missed out on all the really cool ones. I didn't have like Dynamite Headdy or Gunstar Heroes or like Ristar, that kind of stuff. I didn't play Ristar until Sonic Mega Collection years later, and I was like, I don't know how to play this. I'm terrible at it. But yeah, I remember my sister in particular. She always talked about, she used to play a lot of Michael Jackson's Moonwalker on the Genesis, which she might have had somewhere for all I know. But it was no. I'm sorry, tell a lie. It was, for me, the Genesis was the Sonic console, and it was also the Warner Brothers 90s cartoons console. It was playing Tiny Toon Adventures, Buster's Hidden Treasure, and Tasmania with Datafer a lot. And my dad was way into those games and was never really, he didn't really like Sonic that much. Not really. He was not a big fan of Sonic. But that was mainly my thing. But so the Super Nintendo, which came shortly afterward, for what felt like a long time, that was just the system that I played at other people's houses, and at like stores and stuff, because they'd have like kiosks of it and shit. And I loved it immediately, and I knew I really wanted it, but I didn't get it until maybe like 95. I think that might have been by the time I got it. And then I was just absolutely obsessed with every game I had on the Super Nintendo. I beat like probably upwards of like 5 times at least, because I had Mario World, I had Mario RPG, I had the Donkey Kong Country trilogy, I had Kirby Superstar. Those were kind of like my go-tos that I would play like endlessly. And but I got it so late, and I was already so experienced playing it just through other circumstances and stuff. And that was just kind of how that sort of went by happenstance. But when I finally had my own, I remember, because like, for example, a lot of games, I did rent games a lot, like other just sort of random ones. I have like a weird vivid memory of renting some of the shitty Nickelodeon platformers, like the Rocko's Modern Life game and the Ah Real Monsters game, which I like didn't understand how to do anything in, because I was just an idiot. And later on, I remember by the time, not to skip ahead too much, but by the time that I got the N64, I remember I was going back and getting games for some of the older consoles that I missed out on. Like, I didn't get Yoshi's Island. I don't even think I got Yoshi's Island on the Super Nintendo until maybe by the time the GameCube was out, because there were just a lot of ones that I'd missed, and I would go back there. There would be some gaming, like collector stores that my dad and I would go to, and even back when Electronics Boutique was still a thing before GameStop went and ate it. Shout outs to my Canadian listeners who know EB Games, obviously, before that as well. But Yeah, and then we would find little specialty stores. My dad and I, when we talked about many times, we'd go on quests to find games and stuff. And there were certain ones I tried to go back and find that I knew were like really good games that I wanted to own a copy of. But I also remember like Mario RPG. I've talked about this before, where I would rent it a lot, and it was always in a different like part of the game because different kids would rent it and get further in it than I would. But then finally, I got my own copy, and then to beat that another 15 times on the Super Nintendo, and then eventually got it on the Virtual Console and all that stuff. So, but Super Nintendo, I had a lot of really really good times with, and aesthetically, that is one of my favorite things. I've talked many times about how with the OST for the Tome web series, I really wanted a 16-bit feel specifically because I really love the sound chip of the 16-bit era. Some Genesis stuff as well. I do like the sound of some Genesis OSTs too, but mainly for like the really really good composers that knew how to make good use of it with the FM oscillator or whatever it's called. But the Super Nintendo sound was just incredible. And I still, it's part of why I love Sylvagunner so much, because whenever they do, like remixes and arrangements and weird shit of Super Nintendo games in particular, it just feels so cool to listen to like new music with those kinds of sound fonts. Cause it's just like, I don't even want to say it's pure nostalgia, cause it is also just like, I think it holds up without it being antiquated. Like I like the sound of 16-bit Super Nintendo and some Genesis stuff even more so than I like most 8-bit chiptune type things. Although I've come around to like chiptune a lot more and appreciate it, especially when it's used for like techno remixes and lo-fi stuff and that kind of thing, for certain types of like proper music and everything. But kind of at this interim, I would say. What's it called? The other Sega Genesis. Oh, sorry, the other Sega consoles, not Genesis, just the Sega consoles in general. So I played most of those other consoles at other people's houses as well, kind of like I did with the Super Nintendo for many years. But they were very limited experiences, unlike the Super Nintendo, where a lot of people I knew had those. But like. I recall, like, I think I've played the Sega Saturn a single time in my life. I remember I was over a friend's house, and he was a big Sega guy. He literally had, like, this is not related to the consoles, but this one friend of mine, I think his name was Tommy, and that I went to elementary school with at the time, he was a big Sega fan, and he literally had, like, a Sonic hat that looked like the top, like the sort of, like, scalp of Sonic's head, like, as a hat. And I'm like, oh, I want that, so I could pretend to be Sonic. Oh! And, so we got this. He had a Sega Saturn. He had a Sega Saturn, and I watched him play Knights. I might have not even played the console myself. I might have just watched him play Knights. I can't remember, but I was like, "This is neat, but weird, and I don't understand what's happening, but it's pretty, I guess." That's really all I can recall about ever having anything to do with the Saturn. The Dreamcast, however, we had I think it was some family friends, if I'm recalling correctly, where they had a Dreamcast, and I watched them play a little bit of Seaman, and I'm like, this shit's weird, and I don't like it. But they also had Marvel vs. Capcom 1, and I played a lot of that on that family friend's Dreamcast. I wish I could remember any of their names or anything about what that was, but I remember being in a really nice fresh carpeted living room, and playing a Dreamcast and playing a lot of Marvel vs. Capcom and probably button mashing my way through that. So I bet that I would have liked the Dreamcast if I was more of a loyal Sega kid, but I knew that by that time I was a Nintendo kid, because my absolute favorite system of all, with my biggest collection of games, is the N64. Without question, and I've done so many N64 Kirbloggs and little videos and things over the years. I really enjoyed doing that one where I showed off my whole game collection. So I've said a lot about my M64 games, but I do actually have some funny stories about the systems itself. Okay, so I did not get the N64 the year it came out, which I think was 96, if I'm not mistaken. So my dad, dear old Dadifer, God bless him, he could not find an N64 the first year that it was out. But he always tried to work really hard to get me good Christmas presents and stuff. He was just always so sweet and tried to get me all sorts of cool shit. And I remember he he couldn't get an N64, I believe, the summer of '96. So what he did instead was he went and he got me he would always kind of masquerade it as like, oh, Santa got you something and Dad got you something. He would like kind of distribute the presents between me and between coming from him and coming from Santa. And so there was a little note of like, Santa couldn't get you an N64 this year, so he got you Sonic 3D Blast instead. And at the time, I was like, well, that's okay, Dad. I like Sonic, and oh, this new Sonic game, it looks kind of like it looks like Mario RPG because it's got that isometric kind of pseudo 3D style to it. And then I played Sonic 3D Blast, and it sucked ass, and I was really bad at it. So that wasn't the happiest Christmas in the world, but it was okay. And we had Mario RPG by that point. I believe we owned it, and we were going through that and playing it together. The following year, I got my N64, and I remember I was so excited, and then I got Mario 64 and Star Fox 64 were my two first games that I had, and I played the ever-loving Christ out of both of those, and then eventually built up the biggest collection of games for that system in particular, because I continued to buy new games for the N64 well after they've moved on to the next system. So, and I remember that was the system that I think I've also bought the most amount of times, because I got my initial one. My dad got another one, because this is by the time my parents had split up and they had different places and stuff. My dad got a different N64 for himself because he wanted to play Turok. He really liked Turok Dinosaur Hunter. And then we would also play Pokemon Stadium together, and like the South Park game and like a bunch of other shit on the Star Fox 64 as well. And played a lot of that together. So that was like our big system. And then also I remember a lot of N64s went defective, unfortunately. That was the original Red Ring of Death before the 360. We'll get to that. Oh boy. But we did buy another one at one point because we had to get another one to replace it. And then so that was the third time. And then also I remember, I can't recall exactly why this happened. No. I remember now. We didn't have a second N64 yet. No, that was what it was. We didn't have a second one yet. And I remember we almost, when I think Banjo-Tooie was coming out, because I was so fucking excited about Banjo-Tooie, we like considered renting the N64 from Blockbuster, because at the time they would also not only have games to rent, but they would even have the systems to rent. So you could like test them out for like, a few days and then have to bring the whole system back or whatever, which is kind of a cool idea, and also a little bit insane that they even did that in the first place. I'm actually kind of surprised that they even did that as a service at all. But we almost did that and we didn't end up doing it. But I think later, shortly after that, my dad bought his own N64 to have at his house. So then that way I didn't have to lug the system over. I would just bring my games, whatever games I wanted to play, and then play at his. And then by the time I moved to LA and I went to oh god, what is I'm forgetting the name of it, but the big game store that's in Little Tokyo here in LA. I just bought a new furbished N64 from there that was working fine, so I could play my games again. And I went through the whole rigmarole of getting like the proper fucking screen capture stuff so I could play it on my actual N64. But it was a pain in the ass, so I just kind of went back to emulating again because it was easier. But I own copies of all the games that I emulate, so it's not that big of a deal. But yeah, that is a system that is the nearest and dearest to my heart. I will say, this one's a little bit of a sad one. Oh no, actually, hold on. No, I'm sorry, I was about to jump ahead to the GameCube, but I'll talk about the PlayStation. I did eventually own a PlayStation 1, but for a long time, my window into PlayStation was playing at a friend's house in elementary and middle school. Because they were also a Nintendo fan, but they had a PlayStation 1 and a PlayStation 2 before I got either. And so my experience with all the classic PlayStation games of, the Crash Bandicoot and Spyro and all that kind of stuff, that was through my friend in school at the time. And then I had more Nintendo games, and they would come over and we'd play other ones together. So we kind of traded off our experiences that way. I I will mention that was part of that point in the timeline, but I'll come back to PlayStation after GameCube. So I got a GameCube when it first came. Oh no, well, it was shortly after when it first came out because I didn't get it immediately. I had to wait till Christmas. So by that time, Luigi's Mansion and Smash Brothers were out. I had learned a lot of interesting things that I was excited to see about Smash Melee at the time when that was first coming out, because I had friends that had their GameCube early, and I had friends, like, for example, kids that celebrated Hanukkah that got a GameCube before Christmas, so they were telling me about playing some of those games. But I got, to start with, my dad went whole hog. He got Luigi's Mansion, Pikmin, Star Wars Rogue Squadron, which might have been for himself, but I barely touched it, and Smash. And I think I didn't sleep that first night of Christmas. I played through all of them. And he also made a joke of like, oh, this Smash Brothers Melee game is rated T. Well, you're still technically 12. You're not going to be 13 until, New Year's Eve on your birthday. But I guess I'll do, he was just fucking around with me. He let me play the game on Christmas. But I was just like, God damn it. I think we might have even possibly opened it on Christmas Eve night. And just started playing the games that night, even before it was technically Christmas, because I remember being up late that night and playing through games already, if I'm remembering correctly. GameCube was awesome. That actually was also a pretty magical system, and I collected quite a bit. I'm sad to say that most of my games that I collected for it, unfortunately, though, are lost. I have a lot of them that I've brought with me here to LA. I think a couple of them are still back home, but yeah, I lost a lot of my older ones. I don't have my original copy of like Luigi's Mansion or Pikmin 1 or Sonic Adventure 2. Like a lot of those, they're just gone. I don't know where the fuck they disappeared to, just out of nowhere. But they disappeared along with my original GameCube that I owned. Because I had the black GameCube and I had the little carry case for it that you could store all the wires, and I think you could slip a couple games in there or whatever. That's just like lost. That disappeared somewhere into the ether. And we never quite figured out where it went, unfortunately. So that, along with a lot of my old manga collection that I was buying with my own money, is just like out of existence now, which sucks because those were kind of a crown jewel of my my collection. But yeah, I do remember taking my GameCube with me back and forth a lot, and that became an easy thing for me to transport because of the way that the thing was. So that was cool. But yeah, that system, I always have such regrets about the fact that, like, it didn't get to have the recognition that it really deserved. I'm trying to think if I have any actual like kind of like interesting stories about the console itself. Because off the top of my head, nothing's really like coming to mind necessarily in terms of like anything kind of crazy. I think that maybe by that time I was able to start affording to buy games on my... No, maybe that wasn't until the Wii. Yeah, I think honestly... No, yeah, GameCube was just kind of throughout like middle school and high school, because the Wii was right as I was finishing up high school. So yeah, I actually don't have a whole lot to say about like stories in terms of just the GameCube, but I do think it is a highly underrated system that deserves a lot more than what it got. But otherwise, this is kind of where Sony comes into the mix finally. So I did eventually get a PlayStation 2 because I realized, like, well, all right, there's a lot of games that I really, really want to get for the PlayStation 2. So I caved, and my dad and I bought the two that I mainly wanted, which was Budokai 1, Dragon Ball Z Budokai 1, as well as Kingdom Hearts 1. Those two kind of coming out back to back were like, all right, fine, you got me, okay. And so we went ahead and we got those, and then we ended up ended up collecting quite a few PS2 games. I think we actually might have ended up having not quite as many GameCube games. Not quite as many PS2 games as GameCube games. But if I went back and I saw my collection, I bet that it would be a lot more than I remember, because we had all three of the Budokais, we had all four of the Dot Hack games, we had Marvel vs. Capcom 2. A whole lot of stuff. Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2. And my dad had a few. He had like GTA and Gran Turismo and some stuff like that. That was kind of the last uh, game console that my dad actually played actively. Like he would play it sometimes, even when I wasn't home. Some of the games that were on there, and he would always sing, "They want to take you for a ride," when I'd have that play in the background for MVC2. I did also eventually get a PS1, and I'm trying. Oh no, I remember exactly why. I wanted to get a PS1. I needed to get a PS1, and it ended up being kind of for nothing because we couldn't get it to work. I wanted to get it because, and I remember now, I do have a single story about the GameCube, and it kind of ties in with the PlayStation 1. I was starting to buy a couple games that were Japan exclusive and that were region locked. If I'm remembering correctly, PS1 and GameCube were the only games that I did that for, I think, if I'm not mistaken. So I got Battle Stadium DON for the GameCube, and I needed to use some kind of, maybe it was an action replay or something. I needed to use some kind of device to be able to play it on my American GameCube. I think there was something I had to do that was weird with that, and that was the era where that was also the only cheat device that I ever used. I never used what's it called? A Game Genie or Game Shark or any of that stuff. I only ever used a action replay, which was for the GameCube and PS2 era of stuff. But I used an action replay for using fucking cheat codes and stuff on my GameCube games, and I think that might have been what I used in order to play Battle Stadium DON, if I'm not mistaken. Unless maybe I'm remembering wrong, and maybe GameCube was region free. Maybe I don't remember. Yeah, I had Battle Stadium DON, and I also had I believe the full title was Dragon Ball Z Idainaru Dragon Ball Densetsu, like Legend of the Great Legend of the Dragon Ball or something like that. Most fans back in the day, before the game that we now know as Dragon Ball Legends for mobile, I had what was called by fans online at the time just Dragon Ball Legends. Because the Densetsu part of it, Densetsu means legends in Japanese. So I had that game, and I tried to get, the reason that I got a PlayStation 1, because otherwise I could have played the handful of PS1 games that I did have. I had Ultimate Battle 22, and I had Final Fantasy 5 and 6, and a couple other games on there, I believe. I could play those obviously on the PS2, but I was trying to play that region-locked Dragon Ball Z game that I had in Japanese on a PS1. So I got like a PSX, I think. I got like the little slim model, and I think I even traded it to a friend of mine in school for the original PS1 because I was trying to get this thing to work. I had this device that was like a spring that you would like fool the PlayStation 1 into thinking that it was a Japanese one, and somehow that would allow it to play Japanese games. Could never get that shit to work, no matter how hard I tried, and it was such a pain in my asshole. So I remember I went ahead and I tried to get that working, and it never did. But I went ahead and I put that Dragon Ball game in the PS1 just to see what would happen. And apparently all it would do was play the fucking OST. Apparently if you put certain PlayStation games in a CD player, it plays it like it has the original soundtrack. So Legends had music, and it had these little like interstitials where the narrator was talking and like explaining what the story was. And it had an instrumental version of, I think, We Got a Power on it, which I thought was awesome. So that's all I could get to work, was playing my Japanese exclusive Dragon Ball Z game that I wanted to play, that I heard was awesome. I remember a lot of people said it was fucking one of the best ones. And it was just a little CD in the end. That's all I could really use it for, and that was a big fucking bummer. So, and that was the whole reason I bought a PS1 for, was just to see if I could get that little spring thing, the region unlocker thing working, and not so much. So, but I did also get Mega Man Legends 2, specifically on there to play, and I think I did play because I played Legends 1. I was renting it at the time over and over from Blockbuster to beat the 64 version of it, and then eventually I got the I got the PS1, like, that's the only thing that was available for was Legends 2, and I played it, I think, on the original PS1 just to, like, kind of get the full experience of really feeling like, oh, I'm playing it on the original hardware that it was intended for and everything. So then comes the Wii. So this was very tail end of high school and going into college. The Wii was a great college console in general, to be honest. I have a lot of fond memories of playing Smash and WarioWare and Mario Party with a lot of folks that I was in school with, both actually in college and even going back home and seeing some of my friends that I went to high school with that I still was keeping in touch with at the time. Those were like great party games, all of those. In fact, if anything, I would say like the virtual console and like a couple of the single player games that I really enjoyed were good memories that I had on the Wii, but that was definitely the most like social console, like in a bigger way that I have like, like a big attachment to in that sort of way, with actually getting to play games with a lot of friends. Because not that I didn't play multiplayer games with folks on the N64 and the GameCube like once in a while, but like by the time that the Wii came out, I was, a little bit more of a fully fledged human being and had like a lot more of like an active social life. And that was a big thing that everybody kind of related to, is we could all, that, and also that was by the time the DS came out, and maybe the handhelds will be a different Kirblog topic someday if any of the patron folks suggest that as something, because that could literally be a whole different topic in and of itself. But in that era, playing those kind of games, like we had a dormitory when I went to SVA that a lot of folks I knew were all staying in at the time, and we had little common areas on some of the floors, and like the basement's kind of floor, as well as the very top floor where we'd get together, and there were big TVs and we could set up game consoles and play stuff and hang out and do that. And sometimes we'd go over each other's rooms and stuff. And that was a ton of fun getting to do that. So my fondest memories of the Wii is playing a lot of those games with other folks, but and some of my own too, because I did. There were a lot of games that I would buy and then trade in and then like get something else with, because ones that I don't own anymore, because once I did everything I could with them, I was done with them. I bought the One Piece Wii game, Unlimited Adventure, which was not very good, but I bought it mainly because I wanted to hear the Funimation cast, because they were just starting to do the anime at the time. They were dubbing the show from the beginning again, and that was one of the first projects they worked on with their cast, was doing that Unlimited Adventure Wii game at the time. I bought that and I beat the whole thing and did all the story and everything, and then I traded it in for credit at GameStop. This is when I was living in the city going to SVA, and I got the Bleach Shattered Blade game for the Wii as well, which is just you waggle the Wiimote around and then you win. That's the game. That's the whole fucking game. And I think I also, kind of like the One Piece thing, I got it mainly because I wanted to hear who the voices were for some of the new characters, because they had Ulquiorra and Grimmjow in it. And it was very silly. So I played through those, and then I think I traded the Bleach Wii game for something else as well, and it probably was not worth a whole lot of store credit, sad to say. But so I played through that, and then I definitely got quite a few games in the Virtual Console. I remember going back, and even though I still had a working... No, you know what? Maybe at the time, that might have been a brief period where my N64 game... my N64 system was not working anymore, and I think that... But because the Virtual Console was the thing, I thought, well, that's okay. I'll just buy these N64 games again, and I'll just play them, on the Wii Virtual Console. I'll just do that. Like, that's fine. I did eventually just, I did get a proper working N64 game, N64 again, but I know that on my original Wii, I rebought Mario 64, Paper Mario, Star Fox 64, and I think... And definitely, what's it called? The Donkey Kong Country games and Mario RPG. I got all of those because I wanted to be able to play them with a fucking GameCube controller, I think. Because I think that you could do that. I think that you were able to play Virtual Console games with a GameCube controller because it had the GameCube thing built into it. But then I remembered, so this is skipping ahead a little bit to the Wii U, because I have stories about that. When I got the Wii U and I didn't bring my Wii with me to LA, but I brought my Wii U with me, I realized that I had to re-buy those games in the Virtual Console, and I had to get a classic controller to play them because I couldn't use the GameCube controllers because it didn't have a working thing like that. This was before they put out Smash 4, I think, at the time. So the adapter didn't work the same way, so I remember that being kind of a pain in the ass, and I had to go back and forth between the GameStop that I was going to get all the shit that I needed to be able to fucking play Mario RPG in the first place, which was really stupid. But at the interim of this is a quick thing. I did buy an Xbox 360. I did have that. It is no longer working, as many people's 360s don't work anymore. Sad to say. But I did get a... it's true that I did get a 360, and it was specifically to play Sonic 06. I'm very, very embarrassed by that. And I'm even more embarrassed by the fact that the only real other game that I played on the 360, to be honest, was Skullgirls, because that was the first game that I worked on as a professional, doing animation on it. If those of you don't know, I did some character animation on Parasol and Pinwheel and Miss Fortune, and I think a little tiny bit on... maybe Squiggly? I can't quite remember, but just a small handful of characters I did animation on. So I bought that, and then I also played a lot of the Xbox Live Arcade version of Banjo-Kazooie and Banjo-Tooie. Oh god, what was it? And Dust and Elysian Tale, which was one of my first video games that I also recorded for professionally as well. So that was awesome. And... yeah, so it didn't last very long, but there were other games that I got for it that I never even opened. Like, I got Viva Pinata, I think, on sale, and then I also got, I was given, I feel so bad because Chris Ito gave this to me as a Christmas present one year. He got me Marvel vs. Capcom 3. I think I never even opened MVC 3 or Viva Pinata, and I never even tried them, so I was so, like, whatever with that console, and all I did was just replay Sonic 06. It's like, what is wrong with me? Oh my god. But so that didn't last long, and I think my stepmom, one of her family members had like an original Xbox, and I did play Conquer Live and Reloaded on there, I think. But that was about it. It was a very limited experience. I think I just played through that game, and that was about it. And I tried Halo 2 at like a LAN party that I went to, like some party where they had a bunch of Xboxes and TVs set up, and I remember trying Halo 2, and I was like, this is fun. I see the appeal. It's not my thing. I'm not into it. And that was my whole entire experience. And I hear apparently the Xbox Series X is like a really good console, but I don't have much interest in actually getting it. So sad to say, that's kind of the end of my life cycle with Microsoft's consoles. And then came the Wii U. That was right before I moved to LA. And I actually do really like that console a lot. And I really love most of the games that I played on it. I spent a lot of hours on those. Wonderful 101 was absolutely influential, and so cool, and such a fantastic story. Smash 4 I played the shit out of, obviously. Mario Maker, and just goddamn, I actually have a fair bit of games on the Wii U still left over. But by the time I moved to LA, here's a little thing. So my kind of like old hangout group in the early years, I still see all these folks, just not like all as a group super often anymore. But my old kind of hangout group in the early couple of years of living in LA, and some of you probably remember from some of the old Kirblogs that we did together. It was the group of Kira Buckland, Ben Diskin, Xander Mobus, and Edward Bosco. And Bosco and Xander were living together at the time, actually kind of close to where I live now, funnily enough, in Burbank. And I remember we would play Smash a lot, and the others didn't have a Wii U. So I brought my Wii U over. I would put it in like a fucking Ralph's grocery bag, basically. And I would bring it over and we would play it together. And we'd do the multiplayer matches and we'd do like Mario Kart and stuff like that as well. I remember Kira would always be bummed when we played Mario Kart because she wasn't all that great at it, and she's like, "I want to play Smash instead." And it's like, "But I know we don't want to play Smash like exclusively." But we did a lot of matches together, and we had the 8-player stuff. And then one day, I went to Ralph's, and I left the bag with my Wii U in it in the back of my car, and didn't lock my car like an idiot. And then my Wii U was stolen, so that was cool. Thankfully, I don't think my game... Yeah, I didn't have my games with me, so my games weren't stolen. It was just the system. Because I think what I would do is I would just keep it in my car, because I would go over their place so much that I would just bring it with me. So I was just keeping it in there out of convenience. And then it got stolen. Then I put a thing out there about it, I think on Twitter, and I was like, well, my Wii U just got stolen. And then a very nice fan, and I wish I could remember their name, they were like, hey, I have a spare Wii U. It's the Legend of Zelda, because I bought the Super Mario, the new Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe one, I think is what it was. That was the original Wii U that I bought. And then somebody was like, I have the Zelda Wind Waker HD one. Do you want it? And I'm like, yeah, I mean, if you don't mind, absolutely. So they sent it over. They cleared all the stuff off it or whatever. So I was very, very grateful that they were kind enough to replace that, and it was like not a very long wait either. So I didn't go without a Wii U for all that long. And I was even just reminiscing about this the other day, where I'm kind of hoping that the Switch 2, there's this rumor that the Switch 2 is going to have a second screen. And if it does, I imagine they'll be doing ports of maybe DS and 3DS games on there. And I imagine they'll have a stylus, because I actually kind of missed the stylus from the Wii U. I particularly when I played Mario Maker, and I was making a lot of cool Mario Maker stages and stuff. That was a big thing that I really enjoyed, was getting to make Mario levels with the stylus on my screen, because that was actually probably the big reason why, even though I was really excited about all the new stuff that they added to Mario Maker 2, I really missed the stylus, and I was like, I don't want to go through the hassle of making a fucking Mario level without a stylus. Like, that's a pain in the ass. So that might have been like the primary reason as to why I actually didn't get it. Sad to say, but the Wii U, yeah, I bought like quite a few games for that, and that was like kind of a really fun era. And the first half of the now 10 years that I've been living in LA for was playing that a lot, and playing those games with friends. That was like, hey, I'm finally like living on my own. I have my own place. This is my console, kind of associated with that. And it was super cool. Obviously, again, following the Smash news and everything. And I don't have, I've never had a PS3 or a PS. I do have a PS4. I do have a PS4. I don't have a whole lot to say about it. I got it to have a Blu-ray player for the couple of Blu-rays that I own. I think I wanted it specifically so I could watch the episodes of Sailor Moon that I worked on. The box sets of Sailor Moon Super S, and also, what's it called? The Sailor Stars, the season that never got dubbed until we did it at Viz Media. And then I got it also for mainly Kingdom Hearts 3. And I did get Sonic Forces, and I played Sonic Forces on there and beat it in a single night. And I was, very let down, but nonetheless. So, not that I was let down. I think I just felt nothing is really what it was. So, not much to say about the PS4. And I don't know if I'll ever get a PS5. Maybe someday, who knows? Maybe I'll wait till the PS6 at this point. But I don't know. There's not really a whole lot that I'm like aching to get on there. So, and the Switch, there's not much to say about it either, other than just I've been playing it, and I have a fair bit of games now. I can even look really quickly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I have about 10 games for the Switch that I've collected in 10 years. So that's about 2 games. No, that's not even true. No. I got my Wii U. Not my Wii U. Jesus Christ, I'm losing my mind. I got my Switch in 2017, I think it was. Because Switch Mario Odyssey. I got Mario Odyssey, came out in, I think that was 2017, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, it was. So I think, yeah, the Switch came out the year before, right? Oh no, it was earlier that year. That's right. That's right. And I didn't get the initial one because I didn't get Zelda. I got the Mario Odyssey Switch specifically, so I waited until that game came out, and then the collection began after that. So, and that's my whole history of home consoles that I owned. I don't doubt that I will be getting the Switch 2. Funnily enough, as we're nearing Pokemon Day, as I'm sure we'll be getting news about ZA coming up pretty soon. I don't know for sure if I'm going to get the Switch 2 specifically for Mario Kart 9 or whatever it's going to be called. But if if Pokemon ZA is a launch title or coming out early enough in the Switch 2's life cycle, I will probably get it specifically for that game more than anything else. If I had to guess, I have a feeling that that's going to end up being what the game that makes me want to purchase it is. So we'll see. Hopefully we'll get more news about the Switch 2. I'm assuming it's supposed to be coming out within the year. So that'll likely be the next console that I get. But otherwise, I've been mostly PC lately. And I'm not minding it all that much because it's nice and convenient. And even though I only ever had one Microsoft console, I'm so used to using the 360 controller for playing most games these days because that's what I have plugged into my computer. For fuck's sake, I did most of the testing of the Tome game that I made with a 360 controller. So whatever that says, I guess. Nonetheless, well, that's my little history. So as we come to the end here... This Kirblog topic was suggested by Lava Ring X, and if you'd like to suggest topics for videos like these, and if you want to hear me record them in my community Discord server before they release, consider supporting me on Patreon at patreon.com/Kirbifer. Tell me your history of the consoles that you've owned, maybe a funny story about one or two of them that you've got, some interesting things that you remember from growing up with them or otherwise, or even recent stuff if you've got a funny story from them recently. And let me know if you plan on getting a Switch 2 or maybe want to get a PS5 or an Xbox Series X, or if you have any of the newer consoles or any of the ones that I don't have, and if you would highly recommend them or not. So thank you all for listening, and I'll catch you all in the next one, and see y'all in March. Thanks a bunch. And and please feel free to tune in to my live streams. I'm currently playing through Pokemon Red, the pure RGB mod. I've gotten back to streaming again for the first time in a while, so tune in, like and subscribe, yada, 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 all that stuff. And thanks for listening. So take care, y'all. Bye-bye.